Right, so on the desk in front of me here are two channel strips out of an old Soundtracs desk. Reason I'm just filming this video, because I've not really filmed much this year. I'm just going to have a waffle and a film. And if you're interested in just hearing a story about an old analog mixing desk, then feel free to carry on watching. So I've been recapping every single one of these channel strips. Now, I'm quite against recapping, because recapping's like the modern age equivalent of art, but it's just a tube, mate. Back in the old telly days or tube radio days, or it's just a valve, mate. And the amount of forums I see where people, and Facebook videos where people have gone, I've tried to recap this and it's still broken, any ideas what to do now? And you're like, well, it didn't need recapping in the first place, mate. It's hardly ever the caps. So anyway, as you can see, like some nice blue caps down here. In this box here, each channel strip, there's 48 channel strips. I've been on this all your bloody year. There's 3 of these ones, this size. There's 2 of this size. And then these teeny tiny little ones. In total, there's 4 different values of them. And in total, it comes to 45, 46, I believe. Or 45. And then there's a couple of 10 ohm fusible resistors, which live down there. In total, about 2,550 components. So, pretty cool desk. It's got, like I say, it's got 48 of these. Obviously, with all the modern digital stuff nowadays, you don't use so many of the functions on it, like all the tape returns and sends and stuff. And the ability to change, like you could route either your main slider, which is down here, actually stays in the desk when these come out. You could either route what was going to your tape machines coming back from them, or your mix and stuff through here to listen to. You don't do that anymore. You know, handy desk. So anyway, story behind it is, I'll save you the run-up story of how the desk came to be purchased, but in 2014, after the previous desk my friend used to use in a little studio he'd built around the back of his house got water damaged, he acquired this. Put in a new studio, didn't really get used a lot. He sort of moved house, wanted to build a proper studio. So it wasn't until about 2017 it sort of started getting close to being finished. I think about early 2018 it got put back into use. Within 6 months the power supply died, all the caps had dried out. So in 2018, I sorted the power supply out, took it back, and when I say all the caps are dried out, I mean like all the small value axial caps, like these ones, were just measuring picofarads. Meant to be electrolytic caps, they was dead. The only 2 radials in it were the 2 big power supply caps. One had just about died, and the other wasn't far off. Huge amounts of pressure in them, huge ESR, a fraction of value they should have been. It was dead. Anyway, when I took the power supply back and he realised how much quieter the whole thing was, he said to me, do you want to fancy taking one of those channel strips and then at some point just seeing if you can get it working, because there were some dead strips on the desk. Took one home about this time somewhere. It was getting later in the year. I think it actually might have been a bit earlier. I seem to recall it was still warmish, so like early autumn. Took it home. It sat on that shelf just there at the top. Oh, blessed arms. Sat just up there on that shelf 2018 till Christmas last year. So 3 years. 2018 to 2021, 3 years. Whilst I was off over Christmas, got all the parts to recap it. Because again, I'd cut a few caps out. And even if you tried, because electrolytic caps lose their polarization over time, they don't have voltage across them. Even after putting voltage across them and letting them sit for a while, it brought a bit of it back, but they were nowhere near where they should be. And most of these caps in the signal chain don't have voltage across them. They're only there to block minor DC offsets or fault conditions. So with a varying signal across them, the last thing you want them doing is changing in value as they sort of reverse conduct or become partially polarized for a bit. Knackered, basically. Totally knackered. So recapped it. I think I had to change a pot in that one as well. Took it back, we put it in the desk, and the difference was absolute night and day. So he said to me, well, do you fancy doing the whole desk? And I said, no, I bloody well don't. And he asked me again, made me a cup of tea, and I was like, still don't fancy doing it. Anyway, he said he'd found a guy who'd do it, and I just knew that the guy I was going to do it was probably just going to do one of my absolute pet hates, where they just put the one lead onto another, a blob of solder, and call that soldering. And you gotta cut them off. You've got to put a little J hook on it to make a mechanical connection and solder them properly. So I said, right, I'll do the bloody desk. There's 48 of these. They take several hours to do each. Anyway, as I've been going along, no end of these pots haven't even turned. At some point, someone spilt something very sticky, probably cola or a very high sugar beverage on the desk. And on these dual pots, because they are 2 pots in one, so you've got the top knob or the bottom knob, it goes down in here. It basically gummed these together. You couldn't turn one knob without, you basically turn one shaft without both turning together like that. Some would lock solid. So it took ages to spray and break them free. On some of them, people have tried to force them with pliers or just force these, and all they've done is they broke the internals. So there's been lots of gluing and melting and stuff, sorting all the broken ones out. On some of them, whoever broke them had just ended up changing them for these horrible, nasty ones. So yeah, and here I am. It's took me all bloody year. My initial plan was, I started on it in January. Like I said, we did the first one over Christmas. My initial plan in January, I thought, if I do one a week, they'll be done by the end of the year. And I thought, once I'd done a couple, I think the first one took me about 6 hours or something, because, you know, first one. Once I'd done a couple, I got the time down a good chunk. I thought, right, I'll see if I can get 2 a week done. Ended up with some health problems. Still having some fun with that, but nowhere near as bad as I was. Then we had an incredibly red hot summer, and obviously being a motorcyclist, I wanted to go out and do some motorcycling and stuff, and went away a few times over summer. So for sort of July and August, it didn't get done a lot on it. Got back to it because I'd fallen massively behind. I think I was only something daft like 15 strips in or something by the time we got into start of September. So yeah, for the last 3 months essentially, I've been doing at least two a week. Yeah, I might have had a bit more done. Anyway, whichever way it was, I know I was definitely nowhere near halfway by the start of September. So anyway, and here we are, end of November, and I finally got number 48 done. That's not actually, yes it is, that was number 48. So yeah, anyway, some interesting things along the way. Some of the channel strips you can see, like a different coloured board, obviously different revisions of circuit board. It's become quite obvious as I've been working on it that the desk has been a bitzer at some point. There's ribbon in it for some stereo pair channels. I don't know if it ever had them in, or if all the desks just had that ribbon in, whether it was used or not. But, you know, you can tell with revisions to the boards like these, there's been at least 4 different kinds of these top boards and at least 3 different kinds of these bottom boards. And you can tell with the ages of them, some of them have been absolutely filthy when I've took them apart. Some of them have been slightly cleaner, but they're clearly an older board where they've been out at some point and they've had a bit of work done. Some have been bodged up. Some have had really bad leaking caps on them. Some of them are much newer. You can tell on some of them that maybe like this top board had gone, so it'd been took apart and just this top board had been replaced, but the bottom hadn't. Some of them you can see, like on these switches, they had like traces of oil around them, where someone at some point has given them a blast of switch cleaner and lubricant, and as you do that, obviously you get a little bit on the surface and it's adhered to it. So yeah, it's a bits of desk, especially with all the coffee gummed channel strips. I often wonder, did that actually happen whilst it was on this desk, or was that off a different desk and someone swapped them all out and just shoved them in this desk? Because you've got to bear in mind, it's an old analogue desk. At some point it got pulled out of a recording studio or, you know, a live venue gig or wherever it was at, and got replaced by probably a small digital one, or even just a rack mount digital sound card setup, all controlled by a computer or whatever. Who can say? So at some point it was a very valuable desk. When you look at price wise, I think if you convert it to today's money, it would cost you something like £95,000 if you wanted to buy it for the same price it was when it was brought new in 1989. Something along those lines. It might actually be even more than that. But yeah, at some point it became worth very little, and then it basically became a kind of expensive paperweight when it had lots of dead channel strips. And anyway, so here I am today, channel 48 of this beautiful old Soundtracs IL48-32. Taking them around tomorrow. I've got these two here and there's another one in the window over there. And then that will finally, that hole which has been sat to the right hand side of the desk, because you can obviously take these out and still keep using the desk. There's been a hole there on the right hand side for 4 years, and tomorrow will be the day it finally gets filled. Over Christmas, I've still got to do the main channel strip, and then we're going to pull there's a meter bridge at the back, obviously has 32 LED VU meters on it, and they've all got dried out caps. You can tell the way they flick about randomly. Some are still semi-working, some occasionally break into just oscillation and just light up. But yeah, here she is. As I don't that many people have listened to this video, it's kind of just more for me at some point in the future if I'm trying to remember what I did on it, how long it took me, or when I did it. It's just a reference to me. Some people I know, I like listening to random waffle videos as I work on stuff. It's nice to just hear the story. And yeah, control wise, you got phase invert, select between line and mic, a pad for reducing level, 48 volt on and off. Then you got on your mic and line gains. You got sweepable EQ, so you can sweep the center frequency and then you can select how much boost or cut it has at that frequency. And then you can sweep the Q as well, so you can set how narrow that it is either side of that boost and cut, how much it affects the frequencies next to it. And then you've got your obviously buttons for selecting your EQ or your low cut or high pass, however you want to say it. And then again, look, all your aux send and returns, and whether you select what routing you're selecting. And then you get down to this again. This is what would have been used for like old tape machine and stuff. So that's your pan on it, and that's the level. And then you could use whichever button it was. One of these will now reverse on that one. That will select whether it's the main mix or whether it's your monitor mix going through your main slider. Then you're routing on your main mix bus. So you got 1 to 16, and then I think you press that one in, and it becomes 17 to 32, and just your solo, mute and safe. Yeah, and that's it. Hello, kitty. Yeah, hello. And did you hear me talking? Do you want to see what Liam's talking about? Did you? Oh, purr. I found out the other day that this type of cat is called a calico. I always thought it was just a tortoiseshell, but apparently a tortoiseshell only has 2 colours and a calico has 3, and you can clearly see. I'd say she actually has more than 3 colours, but obviously brown, black and white, but she's got like yellow and gold and ginge. But yeah, she's a calico apparently, aren't you? Yes, you are. So yeah, anyway, so the lion's share of the work is done. The mains, although they're going to be a bit of a dog to do, they don't have a massive amount of components on compared to 48 channel strips. And the meter bridge actually doesn't have that many caps at all that want replacing, and I'm not even going to bring that round here. We're going to do that in the studio with my mates, so we'll just jump on it. But yeah, so I've kept, the reason don't actually quite have all of them. The first 2 I chucked these away. Look, there's one of those blown caps I was on about when I put them in backwards. Even burnt out a soldering iron nib. Got through about 20 meters of desoldering braid, 2 cans of EML switch lubricant and cleaner. Yeah, the reason I've kept them all is the bloke who owns it, because his wife is a tattooist and artist amongst other things. She's a good friend as well. She's not just his wife, she is my friend. Come with the idea of either casting them in resin as a tabletop or a step or something. So when people come around the studio and go, what's that weird looking thing you've got there? You can say, that's all the components that come out of that mixing desk when it got refurbished. Like I say, I'd done the first 2 before he said that, but the rest of them, they've all been kept. So yeah, which is kind of cool. So when you just look at it like that, when you're looking at all the reel after reel of the bloody, you get, if I can find them, capacitors come on a tape which would normally be put into a machine. when you have them and there's meters and meters and meters of it, and you've slowly worked your way through it all. So yeah, anyway, that's just my random waffle. If anyone's actually watched this, I'll be friggin' amazed. But if you have, give us a... I never ask, but in this instance, just for the hell of it, give us a thumbs up and a like. And a comment if you've actually watched it. Anyway, yeah, so once this is bloody done out of the way, I'm going to go back to doing some of my own projects. I've got low end of design and tinker projects to work on. This has just been, this has really been most of my year now. House needs a bloody good clean, because for the last couple of months, every spare minute I've been doing this and not picking up the hoover or the scrubbing brush or anything. So, you know, you can't do everything, can you? So anyway, yeah, like I say, if you've watched it, absolute hats off to you. Thank you very much. I'm going to go put the kettle on. Cheerio.